If you were born in Texas, chances are you'd be a Christian. But if you were born in Mecca, or Medina, or Bali, probably not. It's a simple observation, a fact that makes most people uncomfortable. Because if your faith depends on where you were born, what does that say about truth? Does it make Christianity real, or just geography disguised as destiny? Today, we're peeling back the curtain. We'll look at belief, God, and why birth seems to decide your eternity. And by the end, you might never look at religion the same way again. Geography isn't just a map. Look at a map of the world's religions. Christianity is unique because it is scattered across continents, touching nearly every culture and society. You can find it in bustling cities in Asia, in remote villages in Africa, across the historic towns of Europe, and spread throughout the Americas. Unlike Islam, which has Mecca as a spiritual and geographic focal point, or Hinduism, which is concentrated largely in India, Christianity doesn't have a single, central hub. Yet this very universality creates a strange tension. On the one hand, it is everywhere, accessible to nearly anyone. On the other hand, where you are born still predicts with remarkable accuracy whether you will identify as Christian. Think about that for a moment. You could grow up on the same planet, breathing the same air, facing the same human struggles, yet your odds of embracing Christianity are shaped almost entirely by the coordinates of your birth. If you are born in Texas, the probability that you will grow up in a Christian household is staggering. If you are born in Indonesia, the world's most populous Muslim-majority nation, the likelihood drops dramatically. Geography becomes a silent determinant of belief. It is invisible, but it exerts enormous influence, like a shadow you cannot see but feel everywhere you go. This creates a paradox that is both statistical and philosophical. Christianity is not confined, yet it is deeply localized in terms of adherence. You cannot point to a single Christian homeland, and yet the social, cultural, and geographic context shapes the life you will lead and the faith you are likely to adopt. It is the first puzzle, and it cuts deeper than just numbers. It raises the question: if faith is supposed to be a matter of conviction, choice, or divine encounter, how can something as arbitrary as birthplace play such a central role? The tension is subtle at first, but once you notice it, it becomes impossible to ignore. The odds are not random, and that is what makes this mystery both fascinating and troubling. The birth lottery. Think about it. You had absolutely no say in where you were born. You didn't pick the town, the country, or the culture that would shape your earliest ideas about God, morality, and the world. Yet somehow, that single, arbitrary fact seems to cast a shadow over your entire spiritual life. It can determine the likelihood that you will encounter Christianity, that you will be raised with its teachings, and even that you might believe in it deeply enough to shape your eternal destiny. That's a heavy weight to hang on something so random. Some philosophers and theologians dismiss this as a simple mistake in reasoning. They call it the genetic fallacy. The idea that your belief is only valid because of where you were born doesn't automatically make it false, and they are technically correct. It does not prove that a faith is wrong. But even if it doesn't make the belief logically false, it exposes a tension that is hard to ignore. It is ethically striking because it forces us to ask a question most people would rather avoid. Why would God make salvation feel so easy to find for some people and so nearly invisible for others? Why would a person born in Texas have countless churches, friends, and cultural cues nudging them toward belief, while someone born in a remote Buddhist village might never hear the gospel once in their life? The unfairness of it is palpable. It's a shadow question that lingers quietly but persistently, haunting conversations among theologians, believers, and skeptics alike. It's not just about doctrine, it's about the moral shape of the universe. And here's the strange part. We all know the answer is not simple. Some argue that faith is a personal choice, that divine grace works in hidden ways, or that God's judgment will account for circumstances beyond our control. Yet the very fact that birthplace is such a reliable predictor of belief makes us uncomfortable. It is a reminder that so much of what we take for granted about faith is mediated by chance, by geography, by culture, and that tension, subtle as it is the first real crack in the idea that faith is purely about truth, divine hiddenness. Philosophers have a name for this uncomfortable puzzle. They call it divine hiddenness. It is the question of why God seems more present in some places and almost absent in others. Why does the gospel feel so obvious to someone growing up in Texas, surrounded by churches, Sunday school, and community, while in Thailand, where more than 95% of the population is Buddhist, it is nearly invisible? You could argue that some people are naturally resistant, that their minds or hearts are closed to the message. But even that explanation feels incomplete, almost unsatisfying. It raises the deeper question of intention. If God's purpose is to know every individual personally, to draw every soul toward connection, shouldn't the path to belief be equally visible to everyone? Here is where the problem transforms from a simple observation about geography into a moral puzzle. Faith is no longer just about conviction or ritual. It becomes about justice, fairness, and the distribution of opportunity. Some people are born into environments that make belief almost inevitable, surrounded by social reinforcement and cultural affirmation. Others are left to navigate a world where divine truth is subtle, fragmented, or entirely absent. That imbalance creates a tension that theologians, philosophers, and skeptics have wrestled with for centuries. It is a tension that is impossible to ignore once you start noticing it. The question lingers: is the disparity a feature of human free will, a test of character, or a reflection of divine strategy that we cannot comprehend? It challenges the core assumption that faith is purely a matter of personal choice. It suggests that factors beyond our control, invisible forces like geography and culture, shape the very foundation of our spiritual lives. And that makes belief not only a question of faith, but also a question of ethics. How fair is it to hold someone accountable for a truth they could never reasonably encounter? As you think about this, the unease grows. It is subtle but persistent, the kind of question that quietly shifts your understanding of religion, morality, and the nature of God. Divine hiddenness is not just a philosophical curiosity. It is a lens that forces us to reconsider what it means to believe and what it means to judge. Inclusivism. Some Christians wrestle with the problem of geography and belief by turning to a concept called inclusivism. Inclusivism suggests that you don't have to consciously know Christ or have formal knowledge of the gospel to be saved. It is not about checking a box, reciting a creed, or claiming a label. Instead, it is about living in alignment with what the faith calls the will of the Father. Loving your neighbor, acting with integrity, showing compassion, and pursuing justice. These might be enough to connect a person to divine grace, even if they never heard a single sermon or read a single scripture. Think about that for a moment. It transforms the idea of salvation from a narrow, checklist-driven system into a broader, human-centered approach. It suggests that ethical living, sincerity of heart, and moral engagement carry weight beyond cultural or geographic boundaries. Your birthplace, your family, or your environment become less decisive because what matters is the life you lead and the choices you make. It is not about being a nominal Christian, attending church, or calling yourself by a label. It is about the lived experience of virtue, love, and reflection. But inclusivism is not a perfect solution. It opens another door, one that leads to an even more difficult question. What about those who have heard the gospel, who have been exposed to the teachings of Christ, yet remain unconvinced? They engage, they struggle, they desire truth, yet they cannot reconcile themselves with what they have learned. Do they fall outside the reach of grace? Are they somehow less worthy because their minds demand evidence, clarity, or moral resonance before accepting belief? This is where the simplicity of inclusivism begins to fray. It addresses the randomness of geography and cultural influence, but it does not fully solve the ethical tension of conscious disbelief. It forces us to confront the limits of human understanding and divine justice. And it sets the stage for the next challenge, the one that asks whether desire for truth alone is enough, or whether the universe demands conviction in addition to effort. The question lingers, subtle yet profound, like a shadow across a sunlit path. It makes you wonder, if faith is about living rightly, why does understanding still seem to matter so much? Non-resistant non-believers. Imagine someone like this. They have spent years studying theology, reading scriptures from multiple traditions, engaging with philosophers and believers. They have lived with Christians, shared meals, debated ideas, attended services, tried to immerse themselves fully in the faith. They want it, they desire salvation, they hope for it, even long for it, but they remain unconvinced. The arguments don't persuade them, the promises don't fully resonate, the moral claims feel complicated or unclear. They are not resisting. They are not hostile. They are seeking, genuinely seeking, and here is where the tension becomes unbearable. Are they doomed? Do they deserve eternal punishment simply because their intellect or conscience refuses to bend to belief? The traditional picture of hell, of endless fire and suffering, suddenly feels ethically impossible. It is hard to reconcile infinite punishment with a mind and heart that have sought truth earnestly but have not found it compelling. It challenges the very notion of justice. This is not a theoretical puzzle. It is the human heart staring straight at divine justice, questioning whether fairness can coexist with the doctrines handed down for centuries. If someone sincerely pursues truth, if they live ethically, if they strive for virtue, yet cannot convince themselves that a faith is true, should the universe condemn them forever? The answer is not obvious. The problem gnaws at the foundations of traditional belief and raises a chilling possibility that faith might not just be a matter of morality or desire, but also of circumstance, of cognitive alignment, of sheer luck in being convinced. And yet, this struggle reveals something deeper about human nature and about divinity. It shows the earnestness of the seeker, the courage of the mind willing to doubt, question, and remain open even in uncertainty. It exposes the ethical dilemmas embedded in theology and asks us to consider mercy, fairness, and the possibility that belief may not be a simple matter of choice. It is here, in this tension, that faith and justice collide, and the question becomes personal. What would it mean for a world to truly honor the sincere seeker? Rethinking hell. Some thinkers have proposed a radical solution to the age-old problem of eternal punishment. It is called annihilationism. The idea is both simple and unsettling. Instead of imagining a soul trapped forever in torment, endlessly punished for disbelief or failure, annihilationism suggests that those who reject God simply cease to exist. There is no fire, no eternity of pain, no conscious suffering, stretching endlessly into the void. There is just nothing. The thought is dark, almost too stark to bear, but it carries a strange kind of ethical clarity. By removing eternal torment, annihilationism reframes the tangled problems of geography, culture, and chance. Suddenly, it is no longer morally puzzling that some people are born in Texas and others in Thailand. It is no longer ethically troubling that a sincere seeker might fail to embrace belief despite their earnest desire for truth. If God is, as many claim, fundamentally about love, then perhaps the door to salvation is always open. Those who step willingly into it are welcomed. Those who cannot, who resist, or who simply cannot be convinced, step away quietly and fade. There is no injustice, no disproportionate punishment, no cruelty baked into the system. It is a darker vision of reality than the traditional images of heaven and hell, but in its darkness, it has a certain elegance. It is cleaner, less arbitrary. It respects the freedom and integrity of the individual. It honors the effort of those who seek without forcing conformity. It transforms the theological problem into an ethical framework that feels human, relatable, and strangely compassionate. And yet, it is also unsettling because it forces us to confront the ultimate finality of nothingness. There is a weight to the idea that existence itself can be contingent on the choices we make, on our willingness to engage with a truth we may or may not recognize. It asks us to rethink everything we assume about justice, mercy, and divine love. In that quiet, ethical darkness, the problem of belief becomes both more solvable and more profound. It is a tension that lingers long after the thought enters your mind. Labels don't equal salvation. Here's a truth most people overlook. Calling yourself a Christian, saying the right words, attending the right services, even knowing the scriptures by heart, none of that guarantees salvation. Labels are fragile. They can be worn like clothing, but they do not transform the heart, nor do they determine the moral weight of your life. And conversely, being born somewhere where Christianity is rare, where the gospel is almost invisible, does not automatically condemn you. Geography may shape exposure, but it does not dictate the soul. What really matters is what you do. It is your actions, your choices, your willingness to engage honestly with life and with others. Are you kind when no one is watching? Do you act with integrity, even when the easy path tempts you? Do you strive to understand, to empathize, to love beyond convenience? These are the markers of a life aligned with the moral vision that faith asks for, not the badges of identity we carry. Look past the labels. Look at behavior. Look at how someone treats the people around them, how they respond to suffering, how they navigate their own doubts and failures. Compassion, integrity, courage in the face of uncertainty, these are far more telling than the name on a birth certificate or the number of churches in a town. When you do this, you start to see that what once appeared as a cruel, arbitrary distribution problem may not be a problem at all. The world becomes a more ethical, more human place when we measure the heart instead of the label, when we evaluate the sincerity of effort instead of the convenience of tradition. And suddenly, the paradox of being born in the right place or the wrong place loses its weight. Salvation, or moral flourishing, is no longer a lottery based on geography or accident. It is something lived, something practiced, something recognized in the quiet choices of daily life. And that is a lesson both humbling and liberating. It reminds us that faith, ethics, and meaning are not handed down by circumstance. They are forged in how we show up to life and how we act when no one is watching. The human element. Religion is never just about belief. It is about the mind, the heart, and the invisible forces that shape them. It is psychology, culture, habit, fear, hope, and desire all tangled together. The Texas effect. The stark reality that being born in one place drastically increases the odds of being Christian reveals something deeper than doctrine. It shows that humans are drawn to what is familiar. We absorb the world around us before we even consciously think about God. Our minds are molded by environment long before faith ever enters the picture, long before reason or revelation comes into play. And maybe that is exactly the point. Belief is not just divine revelation dropped from the sky. It is social. It is psychological. It is profoundly human. It lives in rituals, in stories told at the dinner table, in songs sung on Sunday mornings, in the subtle cues of a community that shapes who we are and how we see the world. It grows slowly, almost invisibly, until one day it feels like it has always been a part of us. That makes belief fragile. A shift in culture, a move across continents, a question that goes unanswered can shake it to its core. But it also makes it beautiful. It is a living thing, a testament to the human capacity for wonder, connection, and moral imagination. It reminds us that faith, however formed, is inseparable from the people, places, and stories that nurture it. So, when you think about the randomness of birth, the ethical puzzles of salvation, and the invisible forces guiding belief, remember this. What we call faith is never just about God. It is about us, our hearts, our minds, and the intricate web of human life that shapes them. And that understanding, quiet and profound, changes how we see belief, morality, and the human journey itself. The real question. So, if geography shapes faith, what does that say about truth itself? Does it mean that truth is relative, a matter of accident and circumstance? Or does it mean that we are simply not seeing clearly, that the map is incomplete and our perspective is limited? Maybe the real test of belief is not whether you were born in the right place, with the right exposure, surrounded by the right people. Maybe the test is deeper. It is about how you wrestle with life, how you confront uncertainty, how you sit with doubt without giving in to easy answers. Faith is not a lottery, and the world is not a game of chance. It is a journey, a path that each of us must navigate with our own courage, integrity, and willingness to seek. The map of religion shows only where we start, not where we end. Some start in abundance and never move beyond the surface. Some start in scarcity and find a depth that those born with convenience never reach. The journey is measured not by labels or geography, but by engagement, by struggle, by the conscious choices we make to understand, act, and connect with what matters. And that is the profound tension of belief. It is human. It is imperfect. It is shaped by birth, culture, psychology, but it is also deeply personal. It reminds us that no matter where we begin, what truly matters is the pursuit itself, the seeking, the questioning, the courage to remain open even when the answers are uncertain. That is where meaning lives. That is where faith becomes more than tradition, more than doctrine. It becomes a reflection of who we are and what we value in a world full of complexity and chance. The map may guide you, but it does not define you. The world may shape you, but it cannot dictate your journey. And that, perhaps, is the most human, most honest truth of all. When you step back and look at the full picture, something remarkable emerges. Faith is not merely a product of geography, culture, or circumstance. It is a living, breathing, human endeavor. It is shaped by where we are born, yes, but it is defined by how we engage with the world, how we wrestle with doubt, how we make choices in the face of uncertainty. Salvation, belief, morality, these are not lottery tickets handed down at birth. They are journeys we undertake, paths we navigate with courage, integrity, and a willingness to seek truth wherever it hides. And perhaps that is the most profound lesson of all. The Texas effect, or the map of religion, is not the final word. What matters is the effort, the striving, the conscious living of a life aligned with compassion, curiosity, and understanding. Labels, birthplaces, doctrines, they are secondary to the human pursuit of meaning. So keep questioning, keep seeking. Don't let where you started define where you can go. The journey is yours, and the map is only the beginning.